Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mono Report, here with a cool news story. This news broke out about a day ago and I posted about it on the Mono Report Facebook page if you want to check out the written breakdown of the news. This is basically to go through the Hellboy reboot that is apparently in the works at Millennium, where producers Larry Gordon and Lloyd Levin are looking for a new installment to breathe life into the Hellboy franchise. Hellboy obviously was famously put together on film by Guillermo Del Toro and portrayed pretty perfectly by Ron Perlman on the big screen. And that's kind of everyone's go-to look at an adaptation of the Hellboy material, obviously created by Mike Mignola. So this news broke that these producers are looking to reboot and relaunch the Hellboy property, where Dark Horse Entertainment, who published the Hellboy comic books, are also looking to produce this new reboot of Hellboy. They've decided to go for Neil Marshall, who's a horror director who directed probably one of the best horror films of the last 20 years, and that was The Descent, which was a 2005 horror film. Absolutely crazy, claustrophobic horror. If you're claustrophobic, it's not your film, but it's a brilliant horror film. And he's also done quite a lot of work on Game of Thrones as well, some of the better episodes he's directed. But Neil Marshall is attached to direct the Hellboy reboot, which currently has a working title of Hellboy Rise of the Blood Queen, and has a script by Andrew Crosby, Christopher Golden, and Hellboy creator himself, Mike Mignola. Obviously this means that Del Toro is not involved, nor is Ron Perlman, which is going to disappoint a lot of fans who had been very much hoping for Hellboy 3 to conclude Del Toro's trilogy. Obviously in February, Del Toro made one last kind of push to get Hellboy 3 made with Ron Perlman backing him, but obviously it didn't go through with the studio and they decided to pass on doing Hellboy 3. So while it is disappointing to some that we're not going to get to see that completion of that trilogy, it has been almost 10 years now since Hellboy 2 The Golden Army was released, so it may be time to breathe new life into the Hellboy franchise, start new with something fresh, which on the part of Mike Mignola I'm not surprised by. I mean, obviously he wants to see his creation succeed elsewhere outside of Del Toro's work, and if Del Toro's vision isn't going to be put on the screen, then obviously he's going to want to look elsewhere for other people to help bring Hellboy back onto the big screen in a big new way. And an interesting tidbit is that David Harbour, who made a lot of waves in Stranger Things last year, is in talks now to play Hellboy, taking over from Ron Perlman, which is quite an interesting choice. David Harbour was quite good in Stranger Things, and it'd be interesting to see him take on the role of Hellboy, and I honestly think he'd do quite a good job. But this new Hellboy is being tweeted to be sort of an R-rated, darker adaptation, which R-rated comic book films seem to be the norm now. They're starting to catch on more and more thanks to Deadpool and Logan, so studios are feeling a lot more confident in R-rated comic book films, so it seems to be this is what people want to kind of go for. And studios work based on dollar signs, so if they see Deadpool and Logan making money off of being an R-rated comic book film, then other studios are going to be wanting to be in on that as well. So now they're looking at Hellboy to become an R-rated comic book film, which for Hellboy's material could kind of work. It is obviously a much darker comic book. I mean, you're dealing with demons and monsters from hell and all sorts of beings from other dimensions and all that sort. I really loved the Del Toro Hellboy films. I thought they were really unique. They really showcased Del Toro's vision and style with his use of costumes and practical effects, while also still using a bit of CGI here and there to help pad things out. But seeing the work done on the costumes for all the characters was really one of the most defining elements of those Hellboy films, and what really made them stand out. But while I love the Hellboy films, and I know a lot of other people love the Hellboy films, there is quite a strong cult following for Hellboy 1 and 2. The films just didn't make a big impact at the box office to want to continue on with the Hellboy franchise. I mean, if Hellboy 3 was supposedly meant to be a $200 million film with Del Toro, and both Hellboy 1 and 2 didn't really make a huge deal at the box office, then a Hellboy 3 with a larger budget just wasn't really going to make sense. But in an interview with Silver Screen Beat, screenwriter Andrew Crosby discussed about the darker and more gruesome take for Hellboy in this new reboot over Del Toro's films, which I quote, "I can't really talk about specifics with regard to the story, which they're keeping a pretty tight lid on at the moment, but I can say that this is a darker, more gruesome version of Hellboy. Neil said from the very beginning that he wanted to walk a razor's edge between horror and comic book movie, which was music to my ears, because that's what I was shooting for in the script and precisely what Mignola does so well with the comics. I mean, hearing that sort of gives you a little bit more confidence that they're going to kind of treat Hellboy with a bit of respect, and it isn't being looked at as quite as much of a cash grab, especially as they're involving Mignola so much in the development of the film, and he's obviously got a lot of want to see this reboot succeed and for Hellboy to be back kind of in the spotlight. But obviously, what a lot of fans are going to be worried about is if they're going to be shoehorning a lot of R-rated elements into Hellboy that don't necessarily need to be there. As long as they're sort of organic and make sense within the story and aren't there for the sake of being an R-rated comic book film, then you're going to end up with something that's great and worthy of the R rating. But if they're just adding in gore and swearing and sex just for the sake of it having that R rating, then you're going to lose a lot of people and you're going to lose the meaning of Hellboy. So I'm kind of optimistic about this reboot, especially since Mignola is so involved. Again, I did really enjoy both of Del Toro's films, but unfortunately we've got to be realistic with how those films did perform. I mean, the first adaptation made $60 million domestically in the US and another $40 million internationally, on a budget of about $66 million, which, while that seems like a good number and it certainly would have made its money back, you've got to also consider marketing costs and the third of the total gross that the film makes that goes to the theater chains. While the second movie that was made by Universal with Del Toro had its box office really cut short when The Dark Knight opened a few days later, about 6 days later, after Hellboy 2 was released. And obviously, you all know how that ended up. So it was just unfortunate timing for Hellboy 2 because Hellboy 2 was a fantastic film, but I mean, The Dark Knight changed the game. So while I absolutely would have loved to have seen Del Toro's final Hellboy installment, I mean, hopefully someone takes a look at it down the line and maybe adapts it into an animated film. I'd be down with that. I'd be happy to see it at least exist in some way. But if a reboot's the only way we're going to get more Hellboy on the big screen in live action, then I'm kind of happy with that. Especially if the creator is on board and is involved and is happy with the direction that Hellboy is going in for the big screen. So anyway, guys, thank you for listening. Are you excited for a new Hellboy reboot? Would you have preferred to have seen Del Toro's Hellboy 3? Let me know in the comments below. If you like this video, do hit the thumbs up button. Don't forget to leave your comment down below. And don't forget you can subscribe to the Mono Report by clicking that little subscribe button. And also don't forget you can follow the Mono Report at the Mono Report on Facebook and Twitter, where I post regularly with news articles and updates pretty much daily, so you don't want to miss that. Thank you so much, guys, and stay right here for your Mono Fix. Bye, guys.